The first thing I did after that call was sit in silence. I just stared at my phone, replaying those words over and over in my head. Arrested. It didn't match the image I had of him. Not because I thought he was perfect, but because my dad had spent years making sure everyone believed he was. I didn't call anyone back right away. I didn't even search for anything. Part of me didn't want to know the details yet. It felt like opening a door that couldn't be closed again. But eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I reached out to the same family member who had told me. This time they picked up almost instantly, like they were expecting me to call back. "Do you know what happened?" I asked. There was a pause, like they were choosing their words carefully. "I don't know everything," they said. "But it's serious. People are talking, and not in a good way." That didn't help. If anything, it made things worse. Because now my mind was filling in the blanks on its own. I started thinking back to the last time I saw him. It had been at a family gathering, one of the few I still attended. He was there, surrounded by relatives, telling stories about his work, using words most of us didn't even understand. Everyone was impressed. You could see it on their faces. And my dad? He was glowing. That was his moment. The one he had always wanted. He kept introducing him the same way over and over again. "This is my son, the doctor. Not stepson. Not anything else. Just son." I remember standing off to the side, holding a drink I didn't even want, watching it all happen. No one really talked to me that night. And honestly, I didn't expect them to. I had already been pushed out of that picture. But now, thinking back on it, something felt off. At the time, I couldn't explain it. It was just a feeling. The way he avoided certain questions. The way his stories didn't always line up if you paid close enough attention. The way he laughed things off instead of giving clear answers. Small things. Easy to ignore. Until now. Over the next few days, more bits of information started to reach me. Not directly from my dad, he hadn't contacted me at all, but from relatives, old neighbors, even someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone had something to say, but no one had the full story. I heard it's related to his work. They said there's an investigation. It's been going on longer than people think. Every version was slightly different. Every detail felt incomplete. And that made it harder to figure out what was real. I tried to stay focused on my own life. I had work, responsibilities, things that didn't involve any of this. But it kept creeping back in. Every notification, every message, every missed call, it all pulled me back into something I thought I had left behind. Then one evening, I got a message that caught me off guard. It was from my dad. We hadn't spoken in months. Not since the whole Will situation. And even then, it wasn't really a conversation. It was more like a final statement from him, something that didn't leave room for discussion. So seeing his name pop up on my phone felt strange. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. But I didn't. The message was short. "Call me." No explanation. No context. Just those two words. I stared at it for a while, debating what to do. A part of me didn't want to open that door again. I had already accepted where we stood. Or at least I thought I had. But another part of me knew this wasn't normal. He never reached out first. Not anymore. So something had changed. I called him. It rang longer than I expected. Just when I thought he wouldn't pick up, the line clicked. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. Then he finally spoke. "Did you hear?" His voice sounded different. Not strong, not confident. There was something else there, something I couldn't quite place. "Yeah," I said. "I heard." Another pause. "I don't know what's going on," he said quickly. "There's a lot of misinformation. People are exaggerating things." The way he said it felt rehearsed. Like he had already repeated those words to someone else. "Then what actually happened?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. "They're looking into some things," he said eventually. "It's probably nothing serious. These things happen." But even as he said it, I could tell he didn't fully believe it himself. This was the same man who used to speak with absolute certainty about everything. The same man who never second-guessed his opinions. Now he sounded unsure. And that scared me more than anything else. We talked for a few more minutes, but the conversation didn't go anywhere. Every question I asked got a vague answer. Every detail felt like it was being carefully avoided. It was like he was trying to protect something, or someone. Before hanging up, he said one last thing. "Don't listen to what people are saying." That was it. No apology. No mention of the past. No acknowledgement of everything that had happened between us. Just that. After the call ended, I sat there trying to process it. Because something didn't add up. If it really was nothing, why did it feel like everything was about to fall apart? And more importantly, why was my dad suddenly reaching out to me now after cutting me out of his life so completely? Over the next few days things only got stranger. More rumors. More questions. And then, something unexpected showed up. An official-looking envelope with my name on it. No return address. No explanation. Just my name written clearly across the front. I held it in my hands for a long time before opening it, and for some reason I already knew. Whatever was inside wasn't going to make things any simpler. I didn't open the envelope right away. I turned it over in my hands, checking for anything that might explain where it came from. There was no stamp I recognized, no company name, nothing official printed on it. Just plain paper, sealed tight like whoever sent it didn't want to draw attention. For a second I thought about just leaving it unopened. Pretending it never showed up. My life had been quieter before all of this started again. Simpler. But I knew that wasn't an option anymore. I tore it open. Inside was a single folded document and a smaller slip of paper tucked behind it. The first thing I noticed was my dad's name at the top of the document. That alone made my chest tighten. It looked like a copy of something legal. Not the full will, but part of it. Specific sections highlighted, certain lines marked as if someone wanted me to pay attention to them. I scanned through it quickly at first, not fully understanding what I was looking at. Then I slowed down. My name was there. Not in the way I expected, though. It wasn't listed as a beneficiary. It wasn't included in any meaningful way. Instead, there was a clause, one I hadn't heard about before, that specifically mentioned me being excluded. It was written in cold, formal language, the kind that doesn't leave room for emotion. But what caught my attention wasn't just that. It was what came after. There were conditions. Detailed ones. Most of the estate, as I already knew, was meant to go to my dad's stepson. But there were sections that outlined what would happen if certain circumstances changed. Words like investigation, eligibility, and review were scattered throughout. It didn't explain everything, but it hinted at something bigger. Like my dad hadn't been completely certain when he made those decisions. My hands tightened around the paper as I read it again. Then I looked at the smaller slip. It wasn't typed like the rest. It was handwritten. Short. Direct. Things are not what they seem. Look closer. No name. No signature. Just that. I sat back trying to piece it all together. Why would someone send me this? And why now? If this was about the arrest, then whoever sent it believed I needed to know more than what I'd been told. Or maybe, they thought I already knew something I didn't. That idea stuck with me. Because the truth was, I didn't really know my dad's stepson as well as everyone thought. I only saw the version of him that was presented at family events. The confident, successful doctor, who had everything figured out. But that version felt controlled. Like a story being told, not a life being lived. And now cracks were starting to show. I started digging a little deeper. Not in any official way, just reaching out to people, asking careful questions, trying to understand what was actually going on. That's when I heard a different perspective. One of my cousins, someone who had always been more observant than most, told me something that stuck. You remember how he used to disappear for long periods? They said. Like, no one could reach him, and then suddenly he'd show up again like nothing happened? I did remember that. At the time it was always explained away as work. Long hours. Training. Things that sounded reasonable. But now, it felt different. There were rumors even back then, my cousin continued. Nothing confirmed. Just, things people noticed but didn't question. Like what? I asked. They hesitated. Just that not everything added up. That phrase again. Not everything added up. It was starting to feel like a pattern. At the same time, my dad's behavior kept getting stranger. He called me again a few days later, which was already unusual. But this time he seemed more on edge. Have you talked to anyone? He asked almost immediately. About what? I replied. You know what I mean. I didn't answer right away. Because the way he said it made it clear, he wasn't just worried about rumors. He was worried about what I might find out. I've heard things, I said carefully. Nothing clear. That's because there's nothing to hear, he snapped a bit too quickly. Then his tone softened. People like to talk. They make things bigger than they are. I wanted to believe that. Part of me still did. But the envelope sitting on my table told a different story. And so did the way he kept avoiding specifics. Why did you change your will like that? I asked suddenly. The question hung in the air. That's not relevant right now, he said. It is to me. Another pause. I made decisions based on what I thought was right at the time, he said finally. That hasn't changed. But something in his voice didn't match his words. It sounded like doubt. After that call, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important. Like there was a piece of the story just out of reach, something that would make everything click if I could just find it. Then another unexpected piece fell into place. I got a message from his stepson. I stared at the screen, almost not believing it. We had never been close. Not even slightly. And now, out of nowhere, he was reaching out to me directly. The message was simple. Can we talk? No explanation. No context. Just like my dad's message before. For a moment, I thought about everything that had happened. The will. The arrest. The envelope. The handwritten note. All of it leading to this moment. I didn't know what he wanted. I didn't know what he would say. But I had a feeling, whatever this conversation was, it was going to change things even more. And this time there would be no going back. I still remember the exact moment my dad told me I wasn't good enough. It wasn't during a fight. It wasn't even loud. That's what made it worse. We were sitting at the dinner table, plates half full, the kind of silence that already feels like bad news. He didn't look angry, just disappointed. Like he had already made up his mind about me a long time ago and was only now saying it out loud. You're throwing your life away, he said, barely even looking at me. I always thought at least one of my kids would become a doctor. At least one. That part stuck with me. Because in his mind I had already failed. I wasn't a bad student. I worked hard, stayed out of trouble, tried to figure out what I actually wanted instead of just following a path someone else picked for me. But that didn't matter to him. To my dad, success had one definition. A medical degree, a respected title, and something he could brag about to his friends. And I wasn't it. But his stepson? Oh, that was a different story. From the moment my dad remarried, everything shifted. Suddenly, there was someone new in the house. Someone who fit perfectly into the life my dad had imagined. His stepson was confident, charming, and most importantly, on track to become exactly what my dad wanted. A doctor. I watched it happen slowly at first. The praise. The attention. The way my dad's voice changed when he talked about him. It went from, "You should try harder with me," to, "I'm so proud of you," with him. And the worst part? No matter how much I tried, I could never compete with that. Eventually, I stopped trying. I chose a different path. Not medicine, not anything my dad could show off at family gatherings. I picked something I actually cared about. Something that made me feel like I had a purpose, even if no one else understood it. That's when things really fell apart. The arguments got worse. Every conversation turned into a lecture. Every visit home felt like walking into a place where I didn't belong anymore. And then one day he said something that changed everything. "If you're not going to take your future seriously," he told me, "then don't expect to be treated like you deserve anything from me." At the time, I didn't fully understand what he meant. Not until years later. I had already moved out by then. Built a life on my own terms. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I didn't rely on him anymore, and honestly, I thought that chapter of my life was closed. Until I got the call. Came out of nowhere. A family member, voice hesitant, like they weren't sure how I'd react. "Hey, I thought you should know," they said. "Your dad updated his will." I didn't think much of it at first. People update their wills all the time. It's normal. But then they paused. And, "You're not in it anymore." Just like that. No warning. No conversation. No explanation. I had been completely written out. Everything, his house, his savings, all the things he spent a lifetime building, it was all going to his stepson. The same one he had always compared me to. The one who had followed the path I didn't choose. The one who became the doctor. I wish I could say I was shocked. But honestly, it just felt like the final confirmation of something I had known all along. I was never the son he wanted. For a while, I tried not to think about it. I told myself it didn't matter. That I had already moved on, already built a life without his approval. And for the most part, that was true. But something about it still stung. Not the money. Not the inheritance. Just what it represented. Being erased like that. Like I never mattered. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any more complicated, everything flipped. Because a few months later, I got another call. This one was different. Urgent. Confused. Almost unreal. "Have you heard?" they asked me. Heard what? There was a long pause on the other end. The kind that makes your stomach drop before the words even come out. "It's about your dad's stepson?" I didn't say anything. I just waited. And then they said something I never expected to hear. "He's been arrested." At first, I thought it had to be some kind of mistake. This was the same person my dad had spent years praising. The one who could do no wrong. The one who was supposed to be the success story. The doctor. But it wasn't a mistake. And as more details started coming out, things got a lot worse than anyone imagined. Suddenly, the perfect image my dad had built around him started to crack. Stories didn't line up. Questions started being asked. And for the first time, people weren't talking about how impressive he was. They were talking about what he had done. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me was shocked. Part of me was angry. And a small part of me, one I'm not proud of, felt something else. Because after everything, after being pushed aside, compared, and eventually written out like I didn't exist, this changed everything. And the more I learned about what really happened, the more I started to wonder if my dad had made the biggest mistake of his life. I didn't reply to his message right away. I just stared at it, reading those 3 words over and over again. Can we talk? It sounded simple, almost harmless. But nothing about this situation felt simple anymore. Out of everyone involved, he was the last person I expected to hear from. For a moment, I wondered if my dad knew he had reached out, or if this was something he was doing on his own. That thought alone made me uneasy, because if he was going behind my dad's back, then things were a lot more complicated than they looked. I typed a response, erased it, then typed it again. About what? It took longer than I expected for him to reply. Long enough for my mind to start spinning again, running through every possible reason he might want to talk to me now. When the message finally came through, it was even shorter than the first. Not here. In person. That made my stomach drop a little. Meeting him face to face was a completely different situation. There would be no time to think through responses, no chance to step back if things got uncomfortable. But at the same time, this might be the only way to get real answers. I hesitated for a few minutes before agreeing. We picked a place that was neutral. A quiet cafe, not too crowded, not too isolated. Somewhere public enough to feel safe but private enough to actually talk. The day of the meeting felt heavier than it should have. I couldn't focus on anything else. Work, messages, even simple things like eating, it all felt secondary to what was about to happen. By the time I got there, he was already sitting at a table in the corner. For a second, I almost didn't recognize him. He looked different. Not physically exactly. But the confidence I was used to seeing was gone. He wasn't the same person who used to stand in front of family members, telling polished stories about his career. Now he looked tired. Distracted. Like he hadn't slept properly in days. When he noticed me, he gave a small nod. I walked over and sat down across from him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It felt strange being this close to him without my dad there. Without that layer of expectation, comparison, and pressure. Just the two of us. You came, he said quietly. You asked to talk, I replied. Another pause. He looked around briefly like he was making sure no one was paying attention. Then he leaned forward slightly. There's a lot you don't know, he said. I almost laughed at that. I'm aware, I said. That's kind of the problem. He nodded like he expected that answer. I didn't reach out to argue, he continued. And I'm not here to defend myself either. Then why are you here? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his bag and pulled out something, a thin folder worn at the edges. He placed it on the table between us but didn't push it toward me yet. Before you look at this, he said, you need to understand something. His voice was steady but there was tension behind it. Not everything you've heard is wrong, he said. But it's not the full story either. That didn't surprise me. Nothing about this situation had felt complete from the start. What's in there? I asked, glancing at the folder. Things your dad doesn't know, he said. That caught my attention. You're saying he doesn't know what's going on? I'm saying he only knows what he wants to believe. That sounded familiar. Too familiar. For years I had felt the same way about my dad. That he saw what fit his expectations and ignored everything else. But hearing it from him, the person who had benefited from that belief, made it feel different. Why tell me? I asked. He finally pushed the folder toward me. Because you're already part of this, he said. Whether you like it or not. I looked down at the folder but didn't open it yet. What does this have to do with me? I asked. More than you think. His answer didn't come with any explanation. Just more tension. I could feel it building, piece by piece, like everything was leading to something bigger that still hadn't been said out loud. Start with the will, he added. That made me look up. What about it? The version you saw, that's not the whole thing. My chest tightened. I saw enough, I said. No, he replied firmly. You saw what someone wanted you to see. That made my mind jump straight back to the envelope. The highlighted sections. The handwritten note. Are you saying someone sent that to me on purpose? I asked. Yes. Who? He hesitated. That's what you need to figure out. That answer didn't sit well with me. You brought me here just to tell me to figure things out myself? I brought you here because things are about to get worse, he said. The way he said it sent a chill through me. Worse how? He leaned back slightly, running a hand through his hair like he was trying to steady himself. There are people looking into this now, he said. Not just rumors. Not just family gossip. I didn't say anything, but I could feel the weight of those words. This isn't going to stay quiet, he continued. And when everything comes out, it's not just going to affect me. My grip tightened on the edge of the table. Who else? I asked. He looked straight at me. Your dad, he said. That hit harder than I expected. For a moment, everything went still. All the tension, all the questions, all the confusion. It suddenly felt like it was narrowing down to something much more serious than I had imagined. And you, he added quietly. I froze. Me? I said. He nodded. That's why you need to see what's in that folder. I looked down at it again. This time I didn't hesitate. I reached for it, my hands slightly unsteady, knowing that whatever was inside was going to change everything. My fingers paused on the edge of the folder for a second. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me already knew that once I opened it, there was no going back to how things were before. Whatever was inside wasn't just going to explain things, it was going to pull me deeper into something I didn't fully understand yet. But I opened it anyway. The first page wasn't what I expected. It wasn't a legal document. It wasn't anything official looking at all. It looked more like printed emails, conversations. Dates, times, names partially blurred out like someone had tried to hide identities but not completely. I frowned, scanning the first few lines. At first it didn't make much sense. The language was vague, indirect. But certain words kept showing up. Words like approval, records, review. Then I saw a name. My dad's. I froze. I looked up at him immediately. What is this? I asked. He didn't answer right away. He just watched me like he was waiting for me to catch up on my own. I went back to the page, reading more carefully this time. The messages weren't casual. They were serious, almost tense. And my dad wasn't just mentioned, he was involved. Not as a background figure, not as someone being informed, but as someone being asked things. That didn't make sense. My dad wasn't part of his work. He wasn't in that field. He had no reason to be connected to any of this. Keep reading, he said quietly. I flipped to the next page. More messages. Different dates. Some parts missing like pieces had been removed. But the tone was the same. Controlled, careful. Like people who didn't want to say too much directly. Then I saw something that made my chest tighten. A reference to the will. Not directly but enough to connect it. Phrases like adjustments and timing were used, alongside mentions of conditions that sounded way too familiar. My mind immediately went back to the document I had received. The highlighted sections, the conditions tied to certain situations. This wasn't random. It was connected. I looked up again, this time more sharply. You're telling me my dad knew something before all this? I said. I'm telling you this didn't start recently, he replied. That answer didn't help. If anything, it made things worse. Then why act like everything is a surprise now? I asked. He let out a quiet breath, glancing down at the table. Because he doesn't know how much of it is real, he said. And neither do I. That didn't sound convincing. Not anymore. I flipped further into the folder. The pages shifted from messages to something else. Notes, timelines, bits of information that looked like someone had been trying to piece together a bigger picture. And then I saw my name. It wasn't just mentioned. It was underlined. I felt my stomach drop. What does this have to do with me? I asked again, this time more serious. He leaned forward slightly. You weren't supposed to be involved, he said. At least not directly. That's not an answer. I know, he said. But it's the truth. I stared at the page. Next to my name there were a few lines, short, incomplete, like someone had started writing something but stopped halfway. But one sentence stood out. Original beneficiary, changed under pressure. I blinked. What does that mean? I asked slowly. He didn't respond right away. That's what I've been trying to figure out, he said. I shook my head, trying to process it. No, I said. You're not making sense. I was written out because I didn't follow the path my dad wanted. That's it. That's what he told you, he replied. The way he said it made something shift in my chest. Because for the first time, I wasn't completely sure anymore. I thought back to that conversation at the dinner table. The disappointment. The expectations. The way everything seemed so clear back then. But now it felt like there might have been something else behind it. Something I didn't see. You think he was pressured into changing his will? I asked. I think there's more to that decision than you were told, he said. I leaned back, running a hand through my hair. This was getting out of control. First the arrest, then the will. Now this? It felt like every answer was just leading to more questions. Why would anyone care about me being in or out of the will? I asked. That's the part one don't fully understand yet, he admitted. But your name keeps coming up. That didn't make me feel any better. If anything, it made me feel like I had been part of something without even knowing it. Something bigger. Something that started long before I realized. I closed the folder slowly, my mind racing. This doesn't prove anything, I said, even though part of me wasn't so sure. It's not supposed to, he replied. It's just the beginning. The beginning. That word echoed in my head. Because if this was just the beginning, then everything that had happened so far was only a small part of something much larger. And then he said something that made everything feel even heavier. There's one more thing, he said. I looked up. What? He hesitated, like he wasn't sure if he should say it. But then he did. The person who sent you that envelope. My chest tightened. What about them? He held my gaze. I think they're trying to warn you, he said. Not about me. Pause. About what's coming next. The air between us went completely still. Because for the first time, it didn't feel like I was just looking into someone else's problem anymore. It felt like something was already moving toward me. And I had no idea how close it was. I didn't sleep that night. The folder sat on my table, open, pages slightly out of place from how many times I had gone through them. Every line, every word, every small detail felt like it meant something, but I still couldn't see the full picture. One thing was clear though. This wasn't just about him anymore. And it definitely wasn't just about the will. The next morning, I made a decision I had been avoiding since all of this started. I want to see my dad. I didn't call ahead. I didn't send a message. I just showed up. When he opened the door, the look on his face said everything. Surprise, and something else. Something close to worry. You should have called, he said. I didn't think you'd pick up, I replied, walking past him before he could stop me. The house felt the same but different at the same time. Like nothing had changed on the surface, but everything underneath had shifted. We sat across from each other just like we had years ago at that dinner table. But this time I wasn't there to listen. I placed the folder in front of him. We need to talk, I said. He looked down at it, his expression tightening almost instantly. Where did you get this? He asked. That's not important, I said. What is important is why your name is all over it. He didn't touch the folder. For a long moment he just stared at it. Then he leaned back, letting out a slow breath. I was hoping you wouldn't get involved in this, he said quietly. That confirmed it. You knew, I said. His silence was enough. Anger started building in my chest. All this time you acted like I was the one who failed you, I said. Like I wasn't good enough. And now I find out you've been hiding something this whole time? It's not like that, he said quickly. Then what is it like? He ran a hand over his face, clearly struggling with what to say next. I was trying to protect the family, he said. That answer didn't sit right. By cutting me out? I asked. His eyes met mine. That wasn't supposed to happen the way it did. The words hit harder than I expected. What does that mean? He finally opened the folder, flipping through a few pages like he already knew what was inside. There were concerns, he said slowly, about things I didn't fully understand at the time. I was told it was better to simplify things. Keep certain risks contained. Risks? I repeated. He nodded. And you believe that? I didn't have all the information, he said. But I had enough to know something wasn't right. I stared at him, trying to process it. So instead of asking questions, you just went along with it? I made a decision, he said. One I thought would protect what I built. And what about me? I asked. His voice dropped. You were never supposed to be caught in the middle of it. But I was. That was the whole point. Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. Sure. Unexpected. We both froze. My dad looked toward the door, then back at me. Did you bring someone with you? He asked. No. The knock came again. Louder this time. Something about it didn't feel normal. He stood up slowly and walked toward the door. I followed a few steps behind, my heart starting to race. When he opened it, two people were standing there. They weren't family. They weren't neighbors. And whatever this was, it was serious. They spoke calmly, but there was no mistaking the tone. They were there for answers. For a moment, no one said anything. Then one of them looked past my dad, straight at me. Are you his son's name? They asked. I nodded, confused. We need to ask you a few questions as well. My chest tightened. About what? I asked. They exchanged a quick glance before answering. About the recent developments involving your family, they said. And some documents that have come to our attention. I felt the air shift. This was it. Everything that had been building was now right in front of us. My dad tried to step in. He's not involved in any of this, he said firmly. But they didn't back down. That's what we're here to determine, one of them replied. I looked at my dad. For the first time, I saw something I had never seen in him before. Uncertainty. Real, undeniable uncertainty. And in that moment, everything became clear. He hadn't been in control of this situation. Not really. He had made decisions, yes. But based on fear. On incomplete information. On pressure he didn't fully understand. And now it was all catching up. Hours later, after everything had been said and done, the truth started to settle into place. Not all at once. Not perfectly. But enough. The doctor, my dad had trusted so completely, had been hiding things, details about his work, decisions that didn't line up, actions that raised serious questions. Nothing extreme on the surface, but enough to trigger deeper attention. Enough to make people start looking closer. And when they did, they found more than expected. The will, the changes, the pressure, it was all part of an attempt to control what would happen if things ever came out. To protect assets. To protect reputations. To keep everything contained. But it didn't work. Because the truth has a way of finding its way out. In the end, the image my dad had built, the perfect son, the perfect future, it all collapsed. And the person he had pushed away, the one he thought didn't measure up, was the only one left standing in front of him. But just when I thought everything had finally made sense, one last detail changed everything again. A few days later, I got another message. Unknown number. No name. Just one line. You still haven't asked the most important question. I stared at it, my chest tightening again. Because after everything that had happened, I realized they were right. There was still one thing I didn't understand. Who really started all of this, and why my name was involved in the first place? I read that message more times than I'd like to admit. You still haven't asked the most important question. It didn't feel like a threat. It didn't even feel urgent. Felt certain. Like whoever sent it knew something I didn't. Or maybe they knew I was close to figuring it out but not quite there yet. And the more I thought about it, the more it bothered me. Because they were right. I had been reacting to everything, my dad's will, the arrest, the documents, the conversations, but I hadn't stopped to ask the one thing that tied it all together. Why me? Out of everyone in that situation, why was my name even involved? That question stuck with me for days. Things had started to settle on the surface. The situation around my dad's stepson was still being looked into, but it was no longer just rumors. It was being handled properly, quietly, without the chaos that usually follows something like that. People stopped speculating as much. The noise died down. But inside our family, things were different. There was distance, tension, conversations that started but never really finished. And then there was my dad. We didn't go back to normal. Not even close. But we did talk. Not in one big emotional moment. Not all at once. It happened slowly, in pieces. Short conversations that felt awkward at first, like we were both trying to figure out how to speak to each other again after everything that had happened. One evening, I decided to ask him directly. Why was my name in those documents? He didn't answer right away. We were sitting in the same living room, but this time it didn't feel like a confrontation. It felt quieter. I didn't want to tell you before, he said finally. Because I didn't think it mattered anymore. It does now. He nodded slightly like he expected that. When I first started hearing concerns, he said, they weren't just about him. They were about everything connected to him. His work, his decisions, even the people around him. I listened carefully. At some point, he continued, someone suggested that if anything went wrong, there could be a wider impact. Financial, legal, things I didn't fully understand. And that includes me? I asked. He looked at me more directly this time. You were still connected to me, he said. And that meant anything tied to me could, in theory, involve you. That felt like a stretch. But I wasn't involved in any of that, I said. I know that now, he replied. But back then, I wasn't sure what could happen. I leaned back trying to process it. So you removed me from your will, just in case? He didn't answer immediately. I thought I was protecting you, he said quietly. That wasn't the answer I expected. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. All this time, I had believed he cut me off because I didn't become what he wanted. Because I wasn't a doctor. Because I didn't fit his idea of success. And maybe part of that was still true. But this added something else. Something more complicated. You could have just told me, I said. I should have, he admitted. But I didn't know how. And by the time I realized that, things had already gone too far. That sounded about right. Silence filled the room for a bit, but it wasn't as heavy as before. For the first time in a long time, it felt like we were actually being honest with each other. A few days later, I decided to go back to that final message. The unknown number. The unanswered question. So I replied. Then what's the most important question? I didn't expect a response. But I got one. Almost immediately. Who benefits from you not being there? I stared at the screen. That question hit differently. Because I had been so focused on what happened, that I hadn't really looked at who gained from it. The obvious answer was my dad's stepson. He was the one who ended up with everything. The house, the money, the position my dad had built over a lifetime. But now, knowing everything else, it didn't feel that simple. Because if this whole situation had layers, pressure, decisions, hidden concerns, then maybe the outcome wasn't as straightforward as it looked. Maybe he wasn't the only one who benefited. Or maybe, he wasn't the one who started it. That thought stayed with me. But instead of chasing it further, I made a different choice. I stepped back. For the first time since all of this started, I stopped digging. Not because I didn't care anymore, but because I finally understood something important. Not every question needs an answer right away. Some things take time. And some truths reveal themselves when you're not forcing them. As for my dad, things didn't magically fix themselves. But they changed. The distance between us got smaller. The conversations got easier. And while we didn't erase the past, we started building something new on top of it. Something more real. He never said it directly, but I could tell he saw things differently now. Not just about me, but about what actually matters. Success, titles, expectations, they didn't hold the same weight anymore. And maybe that was the biggest shift of all. As for me, I walked away from all of this with something I didn't expect. Clarity. Not about every detail. Not about every hidden piece of the story. But about myself. I stopped trying to measure my worth through someone else's expectations. I stopped chasing approval that was never really mine to begin with. And I realized something simple. Sometimes the path you're pushed away from is exactly the one you were never meant to follow. And sometimes, the moment you feel completely written out of someone else's story is the moment you finally start writing your own.